We're live from Fenner Dunlop's largest plant facility in Port Clinton, Ohio. And my name is Roy Slack, and I'm your host today. And I'm speaking with Mark Myers and Ronnie Whisenhunt. And they're both from Fenner and Dunlop. Gentlemen, welcome to the show, and thank you for hosting us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
And I like to get to know people a bit. We've talked a bit before the show. But for our audience, Mark, maybe you can start off, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got in the industry.
Okay. So I've been with Fenner Dunlop about 17 years now. My main trade is electrical engineering, and then I've moved up through the ranks, and I operate the facility in Bluefield, Virginia currently, where we build splice materials and diagnostic equipment. I've been in the mining industry over 20 years. I've worked underground in maintenance and done various things. So
okay, and Mark, I didn't introduce you properly because the notes I have here, you are the director of Diagnostics and Bluefield Support Services.
Yes, correct.
And Bluefield is one of many plants.
Right.
This is the largest facility we're in today, but Bluefield is one of many plants that Fenner Dunlop has.
Right. We have plants in Livonia, Georgia, Bracebridge, Canada, Toledo, Ohio. Yeah, in North America.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. And Ronnie.
Yes.
What about you? You are the application and support specialist.
Correct.
For Fenner Dunlop.
Yes.
And are you the senior employee in the company? I know you've been with the group a long time.
Well, it feels like I'm a senior employee, I'll tell you that. So I actually started in the manufacturing process of it.
Yeah.
And so I came up through the development process of manufacturing the conveyor belt almost, I'd say, close to 40 years. It seems like just yesterday. But I'm part of the applications team for Fenner Dunlop. I also do splice training for all our distribution. And so it's been a great experience. I couldn't ask for anything other than what I've achieved in my career. So it's been special, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. We're gonna get to that because with 40 years, you've probably seen a few changes over the years.
Quite a few, yeah.
But that's what we're going to talk about today. Yeah. So
I won't bring those skeletons out of the closet, okay?
It's all good. And we've already touched a bit on Fenner Dunlop, but tell us about the company.
Well, Fenner's been in belting manufacture for over 150 years. Yeah. And like Mark was saying, this is the largest facility in North America. And Fenner is unique in the way that they manufacture a conveyor belt. They're able to keep quality in check all the way through the process. And like Mark was saying, we have a facility in Livonia, which actually weaves and treats all our fabric reinforcements that go in our conveyor belt. And so that is a unique aspect of manufacturing, being domestically made, where we don't outsource certain components that go into conveyor belt. Yeah. So that's a big plus for our customers and our distributors, and plus the support that Fenner's offers, especially on the application side, that they're able to get a hold of somebody in case there's an issue, and we can quickly address that issue.
And Mark, you mentioned the Bluefields facility. So I mean, you've been with Fenner for a while, but Bluefields in particular, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But what does that facility do?
So there directly, we manufacture diagnostic products, and they call it Bluefield Support Services, which is splice materials and everything associated with that.
Okay, good. So we're gonna touch on all those things, and we're gonna start out talking about splice materials, and what and I talked a bit about my background in the old days, and we put in some small conveyors and some short belts, but you guys are doing some huge installations or supplying for huge installations, and more than ever, these belts are, in many cases, the lifeline of production.
Let's talk about our heavy industry tour brought to you by Orica Digital Solutions. ORPRO 3D is purpose-built for rapid grade control optimization. quickly simulate blast designs, generate mining polygons, and classify material with confidence. And Corporate Traveler Canada, helping companies travel the globe simpler, faster, easier. We're heading to events across North America and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsmen.com to be part of Crownsmen's Heavy Industry Tour. Did you know cementitious binders can be responsible for up to 70% of the total GHG footprint of mine backfilling processes? Now you can replace up to 50% of the binder in your mine backfill operations with Graybond, Graymont's new low-carbon cementitious binder. This lime-based alternative binder maintains a 40 to 70% lower GHG footprint compared to typical cement and can adapt to varying mine conditions without compromising performance. Learn more about Graybond at graybond.com. Pumping systems. They're the heartbeat of manufacturing, but they can be real headaches, can't they? Vibration, pulsation, back pressure, it's a wonder anything gets done efficiently or safely. That's where Blaco comes in. Their pulsation dampeners, back pressure valves, and other solutions are designed to tame the chaos, improve efficiency, and add reliability and safety to your pumping system. Imagine less downtime, lower maintenance costs, and a whole lot less stress. That's the Blaco difference. Blaco Industries, smooth flow, smooth operation, made in the USA. Visit Blaco.com to learn more.
Right.
So splices, with big belts, what's Fenner Dunlop manufacturing and offering with regard to splices?
So we have an offering of bulk materials, 28-inch and 63-inch wide, from various gauges from 39 thousandths to 217. We also have various groups and compounds that Ronnie will dive into. We supply noodles for steel cords and finger splices, and we also handle all the accessories like the splicing paper, fabrics, things of that nature.
Yeah. So I'm a customer, and I've bought a belt from you, and we know we've got to do splices, right? And these days it's usually more than one with the length of the belts that are happening.
Right.
So I get a kit, or I get procedures, or what do you supply to me as the customer?
So you can get it in multiple, like say you can buy it in bulk and build your own, or you can get a specific kit specifically formulated for the belt you're splicing.
Yeah.
We offer steel cord kits. I think we were talking about it earlier. They can be up to 10 foot in a crate, up to 10 foot long, 4 foot wide, and 3 foot tall. So really large kits, down to small step kits.
Okay.
Yeah, with steel cable belting, it's very important that when you get the kit, it's got a panel. So those panels are already pre-made, right? Yeah. And so you have a top panel, bottom panel, and that's what they do in Bluefield, is they build that gauge up so that it's laid out properly, and all the material inside the splice kit is labeled, and so that's important that it has that expiration date, and it matches the compound that the conveyor belt's made of.
Well, I was going to ask about that, because I'm assuming, you guys are manufacturing the belt.
Mm-hmm.
So who would know better what the best material, with your knowledge of the belt, I would think that the splice kit you provide would be, custom made, would be the right one for that belt.
Yeah, we have what we call groupings, right?
Okay.
And so there's up to 12 groupings of compounds, and so it can range from a general purpose compound, which is a everyday aggregate application, up to a government regulations, which would be a government regulation for fire resistance compound.
Okay. Yeah.
And so you can't mix and match those groupings. And what makes us exceptional is that each compound is labeled with a different color plastic.
Okay.
So it reduces those chances of cross-contamination within a kit or bulk material. And so that's a plus for the industry today.
Are you facing the challenges of CO2 shortages in your construction projects? Secure your CO2 supply today with Tomco Systems, the pioneers in CO2 equipment solutions. With over 45 years of experience, Tomco transforms challenges into solutions, offering a comprehensive range of CO2 products for water treatment, storage, and transportation. Tomco Systems' patented CO2-based water treatment and wastewater treatment solutions have gained global recognition for their efficient and precise pH control systems. Whether you need pH reduction for municipal process treatment or industrial wastewater, their line of carbonic acid storage and feed products will provide you with 95% or greater efficiency in reaching your target pH. Don't let shortages slow you down. Visit tomcosystems.com to learn more. Attention builders, we've got everything you need to know about the grit and grind of the construction world in one show. The Construction Show is where you can share your expert techniques and strategies to help keep the crew strong and construction sites secure. From foundational tips, industry trends, safety strategies to advanced equipment and machinery. Be part of the voice of construction. Book your episode and showcase your company to millions worldwide. Visit crownsmen.com.
I really like that. Far too often the processes and procedures we get depend on technical or engineers to be involved. But if you make it so that the installers, it's clear to people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's part of quality control, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Far less chance of making a mistake.
Yeah, and I can say that we track quality all the way from the mix to the end, and we also make sure, because green rubber will expire or get old and lose properties over time.
Yeah.
And Ronnie can clarify that to more detail. But so we track everything, and it has a batch number, so we know the age, where it was made. So if there are any problems or anything, we can actually go back and track everything back to the source.
Yeah. I always like to talk about safety, and when we talk about belts, we think about production.
Mm-hmm.
But if a splice isn't installed right, if something goes wrong, that can create a safety hazard too. And I know your company's very committed to safety.
Yeah, it can be actually catastrophic.
Yeah.
If
Or
you've
a
ever
belt fire.
If you've ever experienced a belt failure and on a system, it's quite devastating. It not only is safety concern, but also costly because it does a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So we take that in as priority.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why we produce and we study and test splice procedures so that to minimize that failure.
Yeah.
And that's why we stress when we do training and so forth is that make sure it's done properly, is because you don't want a catastrophic failure.
Yeah. So you mentioned, we didn't talk about this before, but I'm interested in splice testing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's, if a belt fails, I'm assuming that the splice is probably where it most often happens. Maybe not.
Most times it can be. Yeah.
But you're doing splice testing in this facility or another?
Well, it actually comes here. So,
Okay.
and that's usually done on request. Maybe an end user has a failure or has a series of failures, right? And so they want to know why that splices continue failing. And so they would send it in here to Port Clinton, and we would analyze the splice. We cut it open. We look at it. We take photos. We have a lab facility so that we can measure if it's our material. Was the material expired or contaminated?
Yeah.
And so we actually issue a full detailed report of why that splice failed.
Yeah.
And so if you can correct a problem, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, for sure. So splicing, we talked a little bit about failures, but I'll go back to that. I'm not going to harp on your 40 years.
Okay, thank you.
But okay, you guys have both seen the evolution of splicing of belts in our industry. Can you tell us a little about how things have evolved over the years?
Well, from my experience, they really haven't changed much.
Oh, okay.
To be honest with you, for the past century, everything has been basically vulcanized splice.
Okay.
But today's industry, you have mechanical splices and elevation of the new techniques, which is the finger splice.
Yeah. So in terms of splicing, there's the traditional method, which I remember, but there's other things happening today,
Yes.
and maybe you could tell us a bit about that.
Well, we have been developing finger splicing.
Okay.
And so that is a process where you have a finger length instead of an exact overlap. It's a finger length, right? And the fingers can be based on the overall PIW of the belt, the tension rating of the belt.
Okay.
And so the benefits of that is that it's no crosswise cuts, right?
Okay, I see. Yeah.
All your cuts are running lengthwise.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, that's less flex fatigue that's occurring into your splice. And from our testing, we've had results of maxing out at 90% of the belt's overall rating.
Okay.
And so with a last splice, you lose a certain percentage for every step. So for instance, if you have a 3-ply belt, you lose 33% of that strength.
Okay.
Whereas
with the typical overlap.
Right, because you've only got 2 steps in a 3-ply belt.
Yeah.
With a finger splice, you're utilizing all the plies
Okay.
that are in that belt.
Well, even as a mining engineer, I can picture that as the slice right across creates a plane of weakness, whereas what you described, you're dealing with that not directly in tension, but
right. You're running the tension members straight with the belt instead of crosswise.
Yeah. Okay.
And we actually manufacture templates to help cut those fingers out.
Okay, so that's almost that would be a kit, but instead of the traditional kit, there'd be a process or help with.
Yeah, you can actually buy the splice template set up for the
Okay.
different lengths.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are aluminum templates. And so it shortens the measurement process, because if you think about it, if I've got 24, I've got a 24-inch wide belt, I've got 12 fingers, right?
Yeah.
It's because they're 2 inches wide. So you can actually, the wider the belt gets, the more benefit a template is to be able to lay it up, trace it out at a much quicker pace.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. And with all of this splicing, and we talked about this before, I use the acronym ACE. Okay, in terms of splicing training, but you told me what the acronyms stand for.
Yeah, it's Academy of Conveying Excellence.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
and so what we do is we do ACE programs for distributors, Fenner, and it gives them the ability to understand that process, and we also teach the newer technicians the way the belt's manufactured, the mode of failures, and so it gives them an inside look at how to apply the correct splice for the product that's being offered.
Yeah, and I really like that because you're training on the how, but you're also explaining the why.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
why is it designed this way? What?
Yeah. Because we get the question all the time: why you do this? Why you do that? How come How come you ask us to do this? And so we explain that in a 3-day training program, which has hands-on and classroom. So we do classrooms in the morning and hands-on in the afternoon.
Okay. And do you do the training from this facility or at different places?
We actually do it at their facility.
Okay.
That saves on them. They're in their own environment.
For sure.
And we get to look at what tools they have and maybe suggest, something that's is better fit for their operation.
So you're supporting, your distributorship is key to your contact with your customers.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you obviously support them with the product, but you're also supporting them with training, with the background information they need to understand, this product that they're selling to their customers.
Exactly. And it gives us the opportunity to explain what Mark does as far as the product and how it's packaged,
Yeah.
so they understand that when they get a kit or if they're getting splice material, how to not mix and match those compounds.
Okay. So you've given me the perfect segue. Okay. Because the next item we want to talk about is diagnostics,
Yeah.
which is what Mark does,
Mark,
right?
yeah.
So Mark, the diagnostics, it's about preventive process. It's about analyzing failures, and the list I have there's a number of areas of diagnostics that you guys are involved in. But that's what you're doing from Bluefields.
Yes. So we manufacture equipment, and I have a group of engineers that go out and do field service as well. So we manufacture equipment like data loggers that they use in the splicing industry to track the temperature profiles and the cooling of the splicing.
Okay. Yeah.
We also manufacture a product called Eagle Eye. So Eagle Eye actually does rip detection for conveyor belts and steel cord monitoring of splices and for damage. It uses a technique called magnetic flux leakage.
Oh, okay.
So you can actually analyze those signals as they come in, and you can see the splice signatures and damage events in the conveyor belt.
Yeah. No, I recognize that because I'm familiar with it a bit from mine hoisting and hoist ropes, but Eagle Eye might be my first thought was it's a camera, but it's much more than that.
Right. So we analyze those signals, and it builds a map, and it tracks them 24/7. So it'll allow them to get alerts if they have damage, or even stop the conveyor if they need to.
Yeah, and so it's real time tracking.
Yes.
And the say the owner, the mine has access to that information, but I assume from that it can be whether you get it at Bluefields as well.
Right. So the systems today are really up to date. So you can get emails, you can get text. We can remote in and help the end user look at the problems he's having, or recommend, hey, we need to inspect this splice, or,
So that you can get real-time notification if the diagnostics identify a potential issue.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're quite advanced. You can actually set up time frames to receive those notifications. You can notify specific people. So if it's a belting problem, it can email the belt coordinator, or if it's a system problem, it can email maintenance to say, hey, come fix me, I've got a problem.
So Mark, let's talk about a little bit more about diagnostics, and we talked about some of the things that you're measuring. You've been doing this in the industry. Can you tell us a couple of success stories about how this has helped your customers?
Sure. So, of course, with all these products, we have multiple stories of, saving the conveyor on rip and things of that nature. One that comes to mind relevant to this conversation is we do steel cord scanning. So we manually go out and we look at the magnetic flux leakage, like we talked about earlier, of the whole conveyor belt, and then we generate a report. Well, this particular conveyor on the splice had some slight cover damage, and it didn't look too bad, but once we actually did the scan, we found that it was much worse. So we brought our x-ray unit in and did the full x-ray of the splice, and it was pretty significant. So we ended up, they had to stop the conveyor and actually resplice it then, or they could have had a catastrophic failure.
That story, when I think about that, if as a mine operator, I see something that appears minor with the belt,
right?
The belts are so important to production that it would be worth it to call someone in to take a look at that. Because this instance, like you said, it looked minor, but it was on the verge of being a major issue.
Yeah, and we run into situations that way sometimes where they're trying to make it to shut down. And they've got damage. We may scan the belt once a day just to make sure they can make it to that shutdown.
Yeah.
So,
Good. Now we talked about where you're operating at a Bluefields, and you mentioned that you're expanding, and I think you're expanding physically, but you're also always looking at developing your products too.
Right. So we do some R&D work, especially on the diagnostic side in Bluefield. So we're looking at some new technologies, bringing those to market hopefully soon. And we also need, we're expanding where we have more office space and things of that nature because of our business growth.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds interesting because you're, I won't say the cutting, I don't want to say the cutting edge where you're dealing with a conveyor belt, but you're employing some of the technology that's available in the industry now for the benefit of your customers.
Yes. So, yeah, from magnetic flux leakage to X-ray to NDT kind of processes, we touch a little on all those.
Yeah. Ronnie, we talked about some of the success stories from the product end of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've got a lot of them.
There's been many over the years. I can tell you that.
But what are a couple that stand out for you recently?
Well, with the finger splice development, and more people are getting used to using the finger splice. We've done them in South America, in Brazil. We've done training classes in Brazil for the iron ore. We've done installations in Canada. Mm-hmm. Where we've actually been requested to supervise splices.
Yeah.
And so that's always, for me, it's always a good opportunity to be actually in the field and show the technicians of how to properly install a finger splice. And so we've had great success with that. One that stands out to me is that a traditional latch splice was on a shuttle conveyor. This belt is 96 inches wide. Over an inch and a half thick.
Big belt.
And so they had issues with keeping the splices together. And so they were traditionally getting 4-5 months out of a belt.
Okay.
And so it was multi-million dollars to be able to turn this system around. And so we've started installing the USFlex or cord flex splice. And so now they're getting year plus out of the belt.
Yeah.
And so that's been a great experience for me.
Yeah. And operators know this. It's not just the cost of the belt, but the downtime involved in replacing
exactly
or resplicing, or Mark, like you were saying, the downtime involved in a failure is huge. So
I get a great sense of accomplishment when I'm able to go in the field and I actually see something that I can make a difference with, and it may be something that's very simple.
Yeah.
It may be dealing with the actual technique or offering a different type of material to help a customer out. And so over the years, I've had plenty of conversations and plenty of calls with advising somebody on what went wrong and how to best correct it.
I think, and both of you touched on this, is you sell product and distributors represent you, but you're in the field and you're talking to customers and you're working in my line of work, we call it working at the face. In your line of work, you're working at the belt.
Exactly.
Is that a right term?
Yep.
But you're actually getting that feedback, and for the manufacturer, that must be very valuable.
And one thing that we touched on earlier is our support.
Yeah.
Our application support, and the other aspect of that is that we actually do belt recommendations. Fenner has a belt wizard program. Okay, and we get the data. Tons per hour, speed, horsepower, pulley diameters, troughability, all this we input into a computer program, and it actually gives us a recommendation for the belt.
Okay.
Now, with any kind of program, it's going to give you a generic type of product, right? And so with our experience in the applications department, we can look at that and say, we need to up that a little bit, or we need to change the type of fabric versus type of compound. And so we're able to save a customer money that he may be wasting on a certain component of the conveyor belt, which he may not need.
Yeah.
He may be having the belt break down where he needs to increase the carcass strength versus the amount of gauge or compound that he's putting on the belt.
So from an engineering perspective, if I'm doing a pre-feasibility study, I can the belt wizard, is that what?
Belt wizard.
Okay.
Yeah,
The belt wizard can give me just a general recommendation. But if I'm going to the next stage of engineering, that's where you begin to talk about and say, well, this was our first pass, but let's really start talking about what service this belt is going to see,
exactly.
and the details. And from your experience, that's where you can really add value.
Yeah, and it can actually tell you where the trouble areas are on that conveyor.
Okay.
And so if you're focusing on the load zone versus maybe the drive system,
Okay.
so it gives you, it kind of pinpoints or targets areas that need improvement.
Yeah. So it could actually give you some recommendation on a redesign for a mine that you're designing, and saying, yeah, here's a typical conveyor, but based on what we're seeing, here's going to be the problem areas. It gives the designers a chance to modify those before it's actually built.
Exactly. And another aspect of that too is we're asked to do plant surveys.
Okay.
And so this is where we go out and we actually take all the data from all the conveyors.
Yeah.
Right. And that's all the general components, the drive, the motors, and all that. And we put it in, and you have a blueprint of every conveyor in that facility.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you can standardize your conveyors where you've got you've been running a 2-ply here or 3-ply or an USFLEX, and we may be able to say, hey, you can use that particular spec for multiple conveyors.
Yeah.
So you're standardizing what you need for that facility.
So if you're inventorying some spare belting,
Exactly.
and you've standardized, I mean, that just makes sense. That would be very
well. It helps on distribution, right?
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
So that's a positive. I mean, you talk about success stories. Well, that to me is one of the biggest pluses with Fenner is that personal contact, and that support there when you need it.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when you call, there's somebody there to answer. I don't have the answers to every problem.
You don't? They told me you did.
Well,
they told me you're the guy.
Yeah. The key is, though, I know where to find that information, right?
Okay. Good point. Good point. What we talked about diagnostics. I had a note here on Dynaflight, which I don't know if that's a diagnostic or if that's a product. That's a product.
And that's where Mark was talking about. He does X-rays and so forth. So that's still cable. He's monitoring those.
Yeah. I know I've learned some things about belting, but Mark, any final words for the audience about what your group and Fenner Dunlop's doing?
Well, I would like to mention our people. I think we have some of the best people in the industry, especially at my location. I mean, they're continuously looking to improve our quality controls, improve our safety if we can do something better. Yeah. I just have to take my hat off to them because they're continuously looking so we can add more value to what we offer the customer.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah,
Ron?
I would agree. I would agree that 100%. What I'd really like to see is I have great respect for our technicians out there that install Fenner Dunlop conveyor belt, and so I like to speak for them.
Okay,
I like to speak for the little guy because honestly, if it wasn't for our training process and them inviting me into their facility to be able to help future installers, then I think that's a plus for the industry. Working safely and knowing the product and installing the best possible way is a great accomplishment for me.
and I think what I've heard through this discussion is just the importance of that, because if things go wrong, they're big issues. They're not
Yeah.
small problems.
Exactly.
And where you prevent that is right at the belt, right?
Exactly.
Right? The technicians, the people that install it, the people that monitor it. So
Right.
I tell all young technicians when I'm helping them and doing training, I say, how do you build a house? You don't build it from the roof down. You build it from the foundation up.
Yeah.
And so that's where quality comes from.
yeah. Well, we've been speaking with Mark Myers and Ronnie Whisenhunt from Fenner Dunlop
Mm-hmm.
at their largest facility in Port Clinton, Ohio. And Mark and Ronnie, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for hosting
Thank
us
you.
in your facility.
Yeah.